Welcome back to RFL. Compromise. Compromise has been the missing ingredient in Washington for some time now. And even though voters keep telling pollsters they want the parties to work together, the parties don't, or voters don't seem to vote that way. So lawmakers really haven't started to act that way. And now, 2 days after the president was reelected with a split Congress, come the warnings about the fiscal cliff. And all of a sudden, the scent of bipartisanship is in the air once again. Maybe.
Compromise is not a dirty word. I'm willing to negotiate any time on any issue.
If Congress fails to act on a budget deal by the end of the year, automatic spending cuts and tax increases will kick in, costing the average American household about $3,700. House Speaker John Boehner signaled a willingness to include higher taxes under the right conditions.
Good afternoon. If there's a mandate in yesterday's results, it's a mandate for us to find a way to work together on the solutions to the challenges that we all face as a nation.
And he had a direct message for the White House.
Mr. President, this is your moment. We're ready to be led, not as Democrats or Republicans, but as Americans. We want you to lead, not as a liberal or conservative, but as President of the United States of America.
Now, it's important to note that this fiscal cliff contains elements that neither party likes nor wants to see happen, which may explain why people are talking compromise. Part of the cliff, the hundreds of billions of dollars in automatic cuts, the result of last year's debt limit fight, including cuts to 1,000 federal programs, a 9% cut in defense spending, and a 2% cut in Medicare. The other part of the cliff is the previously scheduled end of a slew of tax cuts, like the end of the Bush tax cuts on all income groups, not just for the top end, the end of the payroll tax cut, meaning more money coming out of each paycheck, an end to some business tax breaks, and an increase in the AMT, that's the alternative minimum tax. Add that all up and you get a brutal combination. Nonpartisan sources estimate the fiscal cliff would lead to a more than 2% drop in growth, or put another way, would put the U.S. almost immediately into a double-dip recession. But even with all those reasons to say yes to compromise, lawmakers may still say no, and elements within each party are actually pushing for less compromise, something we saw in a new ad from the conservative-leading Heritage for America. That's the super PAC from the Heritage Foundation.
President Obama's re-election is a devastating blow, but it's not a decisive defeat. Over the next 4 years, he will seek to fully implement Obamacare, to continue exploding federal spending, to hollow out our nation's military, and seek to impose a cap and tax scheme upon our nation's economy. We are in a war.
We are in a war is how that clip ended, and Democrats are saying some similar things as well. Now, joining us now to sound off, Evan Stavisky is a Democratic strategist and a partner at the Parkside Group. You all know Dominic Carter, of course. He's a political journalist and author. And our returning champion, Jessica Proud, Republican strategist and vice president and NLO Strategies. Guys, let's start with the fiscal cliff. Is there enough room on both sides for a deal to be struck before this thing takes effect January 1st? Essentially, do both sides fear the bad stuff in this deal enough that they're just going to work together to get it done?
Well, I think a month ago, if we said that the number 3 Democrat in the Senate and the Speaker of the House were both signaling a willingness to try to come together, it would have been almost as if aliens invaded. It would have been so completely beyond the pale of what we expect.
Isn't it amazing what a presidential election can do?
Exactly right. Or the fact that it's over, right? So, Boehner's comments were obviously, very productive in starting this discussion. And then Senator Schumer today, who we all know locally, but who actually is the number 3 Democrat nationally in the U.S. Senate, he praised where Speaker Boehner was coming from, said it's a good idea for the parties to come together, and that, they need to be, from both sides, be able to work with the president.
Well, I think it's up to the president to set the tone now. He won the election. The country has to come together. These are massive economic problems that are still on the table and have to be dealt with. And frankly, Congress will be up for re-election in just 2 short years. So they're going to be accountable to their district. They're going to have to get something done. Boehner's comments were very encouraging, but I am concerned about Harry Reid. I mean, right before the election, he had a very obstructionist mantra. He said, if the Republicans think that we're going to implement their agenda, they're crazy. So, but it's up to the president to show some leadership, and he's got to come to the table and set the tone and work with Congress. I mean, frankly, when he was first elected in 2008, he was very aloof, and he did not have that kind of relationship with the members of Congress that both Democrats and Republicans felt was lacking.
Well, I think, Andrew, it's a good thing that some members of the Tea Party lost their re-election battle, because now the Republican Party can stand up on its own I think the Speaker wants to cut a deal. And Jessica mentions leadership. I think she's 1,000% correct. And in this case, I think the Speaker has to be given credit. I was watching live yesterday as he made his announcement and put on the table the possibility of revenues, and that's a good thing. It's a good thing. It says that the Republicans are coming to the table, and and I'm sure the president is going to come to the table. He has no choice. I think the deal is already in the works. I don't think it's going to go down. The deadline is, I think, December 31st.
It is.
I don't think it's going to come to that. I think the deal is going to be cut.
Do you think Democrats will be willing to take cuts in social programs, including Medicare, or maybe a readjustment of Social Security? I mean, that's harsh medicine for Democrats from their voters. The voters don't like that.
Look, everyone's going to have, as you said, there's things in the fiscal cliff that infuriate everybody. I think the president has shown a willingness to deal with the debt ceiling. The reason that the fiscal cliff exists is because of the debt ceiling debacle from last year. And Jessica's right, the leadership needs to come from the president. However, Speaker Boehner, no matter how promising his comments were, when it came to the vote on the debt ceiling in 2011, he couldn't deliver his members. So Dominic's point about being able to bring the Republican caucus in the House back to the mainstream is really critical.
So just, we all think that this thing will be resolved before January 1st?
Oh,
Hopefully.
yeah, hopefully.
Well, come on.
I mean, it's
I
Washington,
hope
so you
too,
never know. But the momentum is there. I think the impetus is there. They're going to have to come to the table, I think, eventually.
Then here's the bigger question. Does that, let's say they're able to get a deal done. Does that provide enough momentum for bipartisanship and cooperation extending beyond that, beyond the fiscal cliff? Or is everybody so entrenched and the personal gains out of solving the fiscal cliff issue so, it helps both sides enough that they'll get that done, but it still doesn't remove the intransigence of both sides?
Well, look, the Senate Republicans have the ability to block whatever the Senate Democrats do, and Senator McConnell was very clear in saying that their number one priority was making Barack Obama one-term president. That's off the table. So hopefully, with some baby steps, we can actually see some progress. With some fewer Tea Party folks restricting John Boehner from trying to do a deal, and Boehner was trying to do a deal last year, but in the end, he couldn't deliver it, and the United States lost its A+ credit rating because of the intransigence and unwilling to compromise.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think one of the biggest questions right now is what is Obama's second-term agenda going to be? He really didn't answer that question effectively during the campaign, so it's going to depend a lot on what kind of issues and agenda he puts forward as to whether or not Congress works with him.
See, this is where I start to get worried, because will Senate Republicans and House Republicans play ball in all of this, and will the president show the leadership? It's like, I'd love to be bipartisan, you first.
Right, but Andrew, really, what choice do Republicans have? I mean, Jessica made a good point. They're up for re-election again in 2 years. So, I mean, President Obama, his election days are over. We can argue, we can agree to disagree whether or not he has a mandate. We know what the numbers show. Congress has to go up for re-election again in 2 years. And so no one wants to have that political hot potato thrown in their lap of they are the obstructionists and they are the ones for reasons why taxes are going sky high and for why services are being cut tremendously.
I hope you're all right. I really do. I think we've got the fiscal cliff done, and then I just have this gut feeling it's going to be back to business the way we've had it the last couple of years, where it's both sides going after each other's jugulars and not a lot getting done.
Baby steps. You got to make baby steps first.
Well, the midterms,
Agreed.
particularly in a second-term presidency, can be particularly brutal, so I think that's going to weigh heavily on a lot of people's minds.
Just when you're starting to feel a little bit better. We're going to take a quick break here on RFL. When we come back, we want to ask if this election was Obama's win or Romney's loss. We're going to get into that next. Stay with us.